Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to this work in progress that you guys haven't seen for a little while. I didn't completely abandon it, I just set it aside for a little bit. It's the RE100 slash SD Kitbash that I'm doing here, basically where I did some modifications to the body and giving it the head of the SD Zaku to make a sort of RE-SD Kitbash here. So I've done a little bit of work. Basically, I've gotten all the parts sanded, so that's why there's basically nothing to show you assembled at the moment, because it's completely disassembled and everything's all sanded. But a couple things that I can show you that I've been working on with this, and then what we're going to do today is also add an LED in it as well too. So like for example, I made the new piping parts for it. Like for example, from the original kit, it was using these soft rubber parts which I wanted to replace, so I used just a wire and then some spring around that, and then these Kotobukiya option pipe parts here for that. So like for the ones going around the waist, those are actually a smaller size. They are 3.5 millimeters was the ones I used for the waist, and then the ones for the head and the legs, I used the 4 millimeter ones, a little bit larger ones. Sorry, it's all disassembled now. I can't show you how those actually look, but I mean they look like Zaku pipes basically. There's not too much else to say about that. What I want to work on here today with you guys before we get to basically painting it, because everything else is basically ready, is adding an LED. And if you saw not too long ago, I got this LED battery pack and switch here from Mr. Hobby. It looks like this. And then I also got an LED unit that goes with that, which is just this tiny little, let's see, which one is this? Is the LED chip in orange color. It's a 50 millimeter. I think that's the length of the wire anyway. So it's an orange LED chip there that you can see is this tiny little guy which will go up into the head. So what I've done so far is just drill a hole through this part of the neck, and then also I've drilled the holes in here that I'm going to need for the head as well too. If I take out this interior part, you can see the mono eye is drilled out, and then I've also got the hole out the back where the wire is going to go. So what I'm going to have is the LED, it's just a chip LED, is going to be set back inside of there. And then I'm going to stick a clear part over the top of this so that the LED is shining out and will kind of light up the clear part there through the front of that is my plan. So yeah, this aspect is basically done, as these parts will need to be painted before I can then go ahead and finish the installation of wiring this all up into there. But what we need to work on is basically just putting the battery pack and the switch into the backpack, because I'm going to have this coming out through the back here and then plugged in into all this stuff I'm going to set into the backpack, so that when I need to turn it on or when I need to change the battery or something, it's basically just a matter of just pulling off the backpack, and you can do that here and then put the backpack back on, and it should be relatively simple to change out the battery or turn the LED on and off, whatever, using this included switch. So the great thing about these kind of LED sets here from Mr. Hobby is that you don't need to build anything yourself. I mean, it's all, you just buy it and it's just already assembled for you. You need to fit it into the kit. The downside is that it's going to be more expensive than just making yourself. I unfortunately just don't really have the skills to do LED work by myself. It's something I should learn at some point, but I'm also just not really that interested in LED work for the most part. Usually every so often it's fun to maybe put like one in a kit, but it's not something that I'm interested in enough that I would want to put too much time and effort into learning and getting all the supplies. Also, I've just found it kind of difficult to get the supplies here in Korea, just because I don't really shop online here, because I can't. I'm sure all the stuff probably is available to get. I just haven't been able to. So anyway, here let's just talk about how the backpack plugs on. So the backpack plugs on by these two square pegs here and these two circle pegs there, which is a bit redundant because you don't really need all four of those connection points. You really only need the two. So I think I'm going to cut off these parts and basically just cut off this whole section on the back of here, because that's all not really needed, and then we'll have just a lot of empty space in here in the backpack that we can stick that in, and then we'll see how much else we need to make room for. But as long as those two circle peg connectors are there, that really should be all that we need for the backpack to have a firm connection there onto the back. And here is where our fancy power drill is going to come in handy because I want to drill a bunch of holes in here to cut out this section. Because what I'm going to do at first is see if I can cut out a section of the backpack here where I leave those square pegs in place, just for the added stability of that. Again, thinking I probably will be able to just take those off, but I'm going to see if I can do this while leaving them there, but we'll see if I'm able to do that or not. But for now, let's just put some holes in this. Whew, that really does make short work of your drilling. Highly recommended tool. Okay, after some surgery, I'm actually surprised I was actually able to get this to work out pretty well, despite being a complete lunkhead when it comes to this kind of stuff. Alright, so first off, here in the back, you can see I've kind of cut a vertical channel in there. That is to hold this in here. So if we kind of pull this in, that I will glue just with a little super glue for that to be like that, with the pins just basically sticking out, that one exactly like that. And then for in here in the backpack, on this outside here, I've cut a little hole there, just cut a little hole for the switch, so you'll be able to switch it on and off from the outside without having to take anything apart. That's always convenient. And then where I've just got some tack here temporarily, that's where the battery pack will be glued up into the top of the backpack like that. So basically, like if you're taking this off to change out the battery, you can have this into chunks like that. And the switch will be glued in there. This will be glued in here. Then you can change out the battery and then close this back up. You have to tuck the wires in and everything like that. So I mean, it's all contained, and then it's just a matter of just plugging those two in and then just popping it onto the back like that. So that should work out pretty well. So like I said, I'll have to glue that, and I think I'll probably make it so that the wires can fold in there nicely. But for right now anyway, the modifications are in place for that to work, and then the switch is right here on the outside. Very convenient for switching that on and off. And then, like I said, this will be glued up into the mono eye later on once everything's painted. So that is pretty much it, I think. Yes, and a couple other things real quick that I should show you. Just some small adjustments that I've been making here as well too, is for example, like here on these torso parts where it had like these kind of hole details, I went ahead and drilled out the holes so that would just have a little bit more kind of realistic look. And I did the same thing here on the Heat Hawk. It had like these hole details, so I just went ahead and just drilled those all the way through. Also filed the edge of the Heat Hawk to make it sharper, so that's a much sharper edge on that. That looks much better. Also, the back end of the Heat Hawk too has this little spike on that. I went ahead and sharpened that a little bit, so it's not super pointy, but it's more pointy than it was. And on that note too, if you'll remember from part 1 of this video, we were doing a modification here on the shoulder armor as well too, where we cut off the end and then glued a new piece of plastic. Basically, we just cut off a little bit of runner that we glued onto there. And then later on, I just went ahead and filed that down as well too, and now we have very spiky, pointy spikes on the shoulder thanks to that very simple technique. So again, just go back and watch part 1 of this work in progress if you missed that, on how I did that. But again, just cut that off, cut off a little chunk of runner, glue that onto there, wait for that to cure, file that all down, and then you've got your point. Alright guys, so all the base painting is now done. I ended up going a very different route from what I originally had planned. First I was planning on basing the color scheme off the Zaku II FZ, which is basically just kind of a lighter shade of green, kind of from your normal Zaku II color, and like a little bit different color placement. And then I decided, no, I want to do something a little bit more unique, a little bit more creative with this one. So I went two-tone gray, lighter and a darker tone gray, and a tan for the inner frame color, which is not that unique for me necessarily. I do that every so often. And then red for the feet. It's like a scarlet kind of orange red there for the feet, and then orange for the little thruster accents and things like that around there on it. I'm not sure how it's turning out. I think it's gonna be good. I'm trying to keep my faith in the color scheme. I think like a kind of whitish color, because the light gray is very light, it almost looks white. And then with red feet, it gives like a very Gundam vibe to it, which is kind of a bit odd for a Zaku. But I think once it's all like together and everything, that's all done, I think it's gonna look better. Also just masked a pure white stripe here on the shield, so you can really tell the difference between like the light gray and the white. The other thing that I did do on this that I don't do necessarily very often is some pre-shading. Actually, it was highlighting, not necessarily pre-shading, so just kind of the same effect basically, but doing it in a different way. So just did some shading on that by highlighting that, basically painting the base color, and then adding a little bit of white to the color, or in this case I think I added a little bit of kind of like an off-white beige cream color, and then highlighting kind of the center areas of the parts there to make the kind of the same effect as pre-shading basically. So did that on all these parts there, so you can see the kind of off-white light gray color compared to the pure white stripe there on the shield. So basically what I'm at now is the stage where I need to put on the decals and do a little bit of detail painting around on the kit, then give it some more top coat, and then do the weathering. For the kind of main decal for this kit, kind of the main marking decal, which is where I always like to start off, I'm going to use one of these here, and just wanted to show this to you guys. This is something I recently picked up from Daiso. It's just a little, I think it's A4, I think it's the B4 size binder here, which works great for these smaller size decal sheets. If you have like the longer full size one or anything larger, it's not really going to fit in this size. But if you have a bunch of this kind of smaller size, which is a pretty common size for decal sheets, I got some Bandai ones in here too, and then all the ones that I got recently, the Simpro ones, those are all in a second binder. So I actually have two of these that are full because there are so many of those, but here's more of the Simp decals anyway. And I got Mecha decals in here as well too, and all that stuff. So yeah, they're really great for keeping all your decals in. Now I'm going to do a cool layered effect for this using two different colors of this same marking here, and has had them slightly offset, so it makes basically looks like a shadow image. The cool thing about this marking is that this kanji may not be easily recognizable because it's very stylized, but it's actually the kanji for Kai, which is for this particular Zaku actually is the Zaku II Kai, or FZ, kind of goes by both names. But Kai just means custom, so like you have like the Crossbone X1 Kai or something, for example. You'll hear that a lot for different variation mobile suits, something Kai, and then it's usually translated to something custom. So not only is this a customized version of the Zaku, or a modified version of the Zaku II here that I'm doing, but it also is the actual name of the mobile suit. Here we go, and it's going to look something like that, which I'm not sure using black and gray is the best combination for doing that. I've done this technique with the decal before using orange and white, and I think it would have worked a little bit better. Using the gray background almost gives it too much of like a shadow look and kind of makes it look like three-dimensional. It's almost kind of like hurts your eyes to look at kind of there, especially like on the text. So maybe it was not necessarily the best color choices for that particular technique, but anyway, it's interesting. Alright, so I've gone ahead and then finished up most of the rest of the decals, basically using this sheet here, which there's, as you can see, I used quite a lot of. This is all from a set of decals here from Simp, but I think these are basically just like they're sort of like real type decals here for like a Master Grade Zaku II, I think, or like 100 scale Zaku II, is what those are for. So I didn't really have any guide, it's just kind of went ahead and just threw some on there, so you can see here's a couple of examples of some of those markings on there. And for now, then basically I'm ready to go ahead and start doing some detail painting, then I can lay some more top coat on this and get on with weathering. So I'm just going to do all my detail painting here, just in a few different colors with Tamiya enamels. Okay, so decals are all done, and a little bit of top coat on there. I use like a matte top coat, but I use it like very thin and just kind of lightly sprayed on there just to give a little bit of matte texture to it. It's looking very satiny now, just to help now doing the weathering on it. For weathering, I'm just going to be using some Tamiya enamels, and I won't go really too depth into this, just kind of briefly talk about what I'm going to be doing on this. I'm going to do a little bit of like chipping around on some of the edges and stuff, just with some sponge. and using some tire black for that, and then maybe a secondary color, something a little bit. And then also do some filtering. I think a little bit of like shading in some areas, filtering with some red brown, and then some flat earth and dark sea gray to just kind of add like kind of a tannish kind of neutralizing tone over the whole thing a little bit. And then maybe a lighter color on some areas as well too, just to kind of make like some rain streaking kind of on a little bit on some of the darker areas possibly. So I'm just going to start working on this a little bit here.